What's going on? This is Sean here on the Be On Air Network. We're talking wrestling today because it's Trensday, and that means Wrestling Day with me. I hope everybody's having a great week. After Raw, I'm trying real hard to have a great week. It's not working the way I would want it to because, Jesus, that was bad. Anyways, we got a bunch of stuff to talk about today. We're going to kick it off with layoffs because I missed last week, and I want to talk about some WWE layoffs. Then we're going to talk about why in the world is Smackdown so okay? It is viciously average, while Raw is viciously not so much. Then we're going to dive into that great Impact pay-per-view over the weekend that I really think was one of the best in a long time for a lot of different reasons, not just the Kenny Omega-Rich Swann match. We'll move into the NHL deal with Time Warner. It's not Time Warner anymore, it's just Warner. What that means for AEW, which I don't think is much, but we'll talk more about that later. And then last but not least, we're going to talk women's tag teams in AEW, and then some rampant speculation. All right, guys, we're going to start with layoffs. So if you hadn't heard, and I'm sure you have because you're wrestling fans, and if you're listening to this, you got to be some kind of hardcore wrestling fan because I know I'm a small show and it's fine, but over the last few months, starting actually in February, a bunch of people have been laid off or left WWE. And the big one was, of course, in April 15th, but we'll get to that in a second. Lars Sullivan, thank God, by the way, it was released on February 2nd. Like, I hope he finds, good employment somewhere, but he wasn't doing anything there, and he's got some problems, and maybe he should go work those problems out before coming back to the big stage. Then Steve Cutler was released a couple of days later, and Big Show left, immediately for AEW, followed up by Christian in late February and early March. Then Andrade was let go on March 12th, and then, actually, I think it was confirmed after Fastlane. Yeah, it was confirmed after Fastlane. And then the big one right after WrestleMania 37, Billie Kay, Bo Dallas, Chelsea Green, Kalisto, Mickie James, Mojo Rawley, Peyton Royce, Samoa Joe, Tucker, and Wesley Blake were released. So here's my deal. I think it's okay for WWE to release people they're not using. I think that is fine, right? You'll see a lot of WWE fans out there saying, well, if it's bad business, they shouldn't be able to do it. But the bigger problem here isn't that it was bad business. It's that their business is so good that it seems like they're creatively bankrupt by not being able to find something for someone like Samoa Joe, right? I'm not saying you need to keep Wesley Blake or Tucker around, but getting rid of Samoa Joe sounds real super weird to me, given that he was just on the WrestleMania show the night before as one of the announcers and has signaled that he wants to return in ring. And who wouldn't want to see more AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe? I know, I would. Seems weird. And here's the other thing, right? Chelsea Green had just signed a 3-year contract with WWE before she got the boot. I think some folks will probably say that she was maybe injury prone. She had 2 injuries during her career, so I'll understand. And she was set up to be in this tag team thing with Mickie James, who also got the boot, which is interesting. And then Mickie James had the whole trash bag thing, which they seem to have fixed. But I think, so if you don't know about this, Mickie James got sent all of her clothes in a trash bag with her name on some duct tape or something on the front of it. It was super disrespectful, especially for someone who was supposedly a legend of the business and still wants to wrestle. And so the weird thing to me here, beyond just laying people off, in another quarter where they WWE exceeded profit expectations, is that they had all these tag teams, and they had all these tag teams go away, right? Well, they had 2 major tag teams go away. One, they eliminated last year in the Iconics with Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, and then put Billie Kay in a tag team with Carmella at WrestleMania, and then nothing happened with Peyton Royce because she was supposed to get a singles push and then didn't. Even though the Iconics are one of the funniest and best acts to ever grace WWE, and I don't mean that in a work rate, don't get me wrong, they're not the greatest workers in the world, but especially Billie Kay, but really both of them are these just amazingly fun, entertaining human beings who chew up screen time, right? There's nothing they do wrong behind the mic, and they're just entertaining. You want people like that, not as a tentpole, work rate product, but as part of your sports entertainment, and they deeply fulfill the entertainment quotient for WWE in a fun way, a way more fun way than Nia Jax tripping all over the place or falling on her butt or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Mojo Rawley was another kind of weird one for me, and I understand that, like, I think he falls in the we didn't have anything for you category more than, like, that we're creatively bankrupt. Like, to me, those are the two sort of buckets here, is that it's not, they said that these layoffs were for budget reasons, which is, I'm not beholden to anyone. I'm going to tell you that's a total lie. That is just a total lie, right? Like, there's no reason that they would need to cut overhead when they're making massive profits and just signed a huge deal with Peacock. That doesn't make any sense. Does that make any sense to you? Doesn't make any sense to me. And the other big reason why it doesn't make any sense is because half these people were still signed in some meaningful way to long-term contracts. So we're in original budget projections. And so somebody went and looked, oh, we're going to get rid of Samoa Joe. That'll save us money. Yeah, it's because you got rid of Samoa Joe that you now have a profit that is bigger than your profit projections actually were. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make a damn lick of sense, and just goes to and you're going to hear this from me a couple of times throughout this show. The biggest problem right now across WWE, especially in Raw and to a lesser extent Smackdown, and to an even lesser extent NXT, is that their creative isn't. It's just not. It's just, there's nothing creative about it. Like, if you can't think of a world in which you have a hilarious angle for Billie Kay and Peyton Royce every week, in which you have, like, you could have fucking Samoa Joe. Ooh, I can't say that on the radio. We're going to have to bleep that out later. I'm live, so we're going to bleep it out in the recording that goes on YouTube. Hi, YouTube. But if you have Samoa Joe out there, right, he could be a stable leader while he's still in recovery. You could give him limited spots. You could make him like the Taz of SmackDown or Raw or whatever, right? Like, there are places you could put a talented guy like that would, one, make your fans happy who happen to love Samoa Joe, and two, make me happy, because I don't want to have to argue about why why WWE is having some problems right now. You know what I'm saying? So, in the end, I think most of these people are going to land just fine, right? I see room for, like, Mickie James is probably going to go to NWA, become, like, the vice president of women's wrestling or something, and then if she wants it, she can have the women's belt for life. And I don't mean to, like, talk about nepotism. This isn't really about Nick Aldis, but she is an experienced professional who would lend significant credibility to a place where she could work with her significant other. Not because I think she's a better wrestler than Nick Aldis by a mile anyways, right? She adds more credibility to NWA than Nick Aldis does, and I think that's a big deal for her, is she could create a real legacy for herself out of a place like NWA. I think that would be great. I think that's probably where she's going to go. I think you see like a Wesley Blake or a Tucker hit the indies for a while as well, and then Kalisto maybe hit the indies for a while, but I'd love to see, so in the end, and this is a little bit rampant speculation, a little bit me just playing around, is I would love to see Billie Kay and Peyton Royce and Samoa Joe make their way to AEW, and maybe, in the case of Samoa Joe, maybe as a special attraction. I don't think you need, I think there's plenty of, like, elder statesmen at this point in AEW. I don't think you need Samoa Joe there every week. I think he could do, like, a New Japan stint while being signed to AEW, come back and forth, like, add gravitas where you need a good stick man, or, like, as in like, the like, super mega boss of something for somebody to fight through to, like, get to a belt or whatever. But I think Billie Kay, Peyton Royce, and Chelsea Green could be immediate difference makers in either Impact Wrestling or in AEW. And for my money, a woman like Chelsea Green is already ready for AEW camera-wise. Billie Kay even if she doesn't wrestle, is an immediate value add to a place like AEW in a way that they do not have, that allows women to have more screen time while still, given a good balance of actual entertainment, because it seems like the AEW women's division is at the moment the more sports-oriented division, right? But a Billie Kay out there would just kind of add a little bit more shine to the presentation of it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about all that in rampant speculation, but let's talk about SmackDown versus Raw. So, SmackDown was awesome, right? Like, last Friday's SmackDown was great. Was my favorite SmackDown since I started watching SmackDown again, like, a year and a half ago. And the only one that comes close is, like, Roman's return was really good, and when you realized he was a heel and he was, like, breaking down Jey Uso over time, like, all of that arc of Roman Reigns at the very beginning of his Blue Universal Championship run is probably my favorite part of SmackDown before now, in the modern era. So, now we have Cesaro being in the title picture, which is 100% deserved because the guy is one of the best in-ring workers in professional wrestling right now. Yeah, it's good that he has Daniel Bryan out there because he's not the strongest promo guy, although he's got sort of a great, natural charisma to him, Cesaro does, that really allows him his personality to shine through without a significant amount of stick time. But, I mean, him this week working with Daniel Bryan showed the two to be a real power pair, and we'll get into that big angle with the three of them at the end. There's only two other real things that I wanted to talk about in SmackDown, one of which I loved, and one of which is women's tag team wrestling in AEW, or in WWE at the moment. So, Aleister Black is coming back. Aleister Black is one of my favorite NXT talents of all time. He came to SmackDown a while ago. I don't even remember the exact date. And then by last October was completely forgotten. And I think a lot of people speculated that because his significant other, Thea Trinidad, left over the content creation kerfuffle and then started talking about unionization, and then she got the Best Endeavors email that perhaps the same thing was going to happen to Aleister Black. Turned out not to be true. In fact, over the last few weeks, we've been hearing... Where did I hear those? I heard it on Fightful.com, which you should always listen to because they're... Okay, so I'm going to take a quick aside here for Fightful because... and this is an unpaid endorsement. I ain't nobody, but I've been around the media world my entire life. Since I was 20, I've worked with reporters, around reporters. The most ethical reporting and the most accurate reporting that I am seeing right now in the wrestling world is happening on Fightful.com. Period, bar none. There's other great ones out there, but if you just kind of watch the day-to-day of how a place like Fightful does their work, it is the place you should go to first to get information before anywhere else, right? Just do it. Just go read there. I am more of an aggregator at this point in my life, and I'm going to talk to you about the news. But they make the news, and so they're absolutely worth the read. And it was reported over there, back to the subject at hand, that Aleister Black was cutting backstage promos, had filmed a whole bunch of different ones, and they were going to be shown. And this last Friday, the first one was. And he is the Dragon, which immediately made me think of the Red Dragon movie from the, Silence of the Lambs sort of trilogy thing. And I don't think he's going exactly for, serial killer who wants to transform themselves into a flesh-laden dragon. That seems kind of weird, but there's certainly, a macabre aspect to it, which I really like. And beyond that, the animation portion of this promo package was just superb. It was just so good. And I loved it. I just had this big smile on my face while I was watching it. And I just had so much fun in that moment being in one of my favorite parts of professional wrestling, which is the weird and wacky stuff, right? It's weird, wacky stuff. And it's why I gave something like the Bray Wyatt, Alexa Bliss angle so much slack, because they were fun, man. At the beginning, it was just an enjoyable, for me, because I love schlocky weirdness, it was just an enjoyable moment for me to see this sort of fakey horror whatever, and then it went insane, right? And now we have the weird fake Smiling Lily hand puppet from Doom, and apparently Alexa Bliss is 5 years old, and that's weird, and but she's gonna skip her way into trying to win women's wrestling matches, and the whole thing is just no. I'm completely out of it. But the opposite side of that is that presentation can go a long way towards making people want to be interested in your product, right? I was super interested in Bray Wyatt and Alexa Bliss because of the presentation up until WrestleMania, when they just blew it for me, right? Aleister Black's presentation in this first 45-second snippet promo thing 100% made me want to see more. I enjoyed the heck out of it, and I think that if done right, and here's the thing, if you keep it pretty vague, and if you keep it sinister feeling, you can get to, and I'm not going to say he's the Undertaker, but you can get to a point where it kind of feels like a looming threat that doesn't need to have like some specific, oh, I have this giant universe around me, because the problem with a giant universe like Bray Wyatt has spun is that WWE will come in and tear it apart so that it no longer makes sense. My dad was weird and he took me to funerals, and now I feel like no one understands me the way I need them to, and so I'm going to beat them up in a weird, dark way with lots of tattoos and some neat cartoons. It's a perfectly fine gimmick, and I can't wait to see more of it. Then there was the women's tag team match. Reginald's back. Yay. This is the one thing I had a problem with all night long, right? Was that Nyla and Natalya and Tamina versus Nia and Shayna Baszler. And man, Shayna Baszler was one of my favorite NXT talents. But now she's just, well, whatever she is. It's not the person who's winning a lot of matches all by herself. I think they lost by DQ against Natalya and Tamina in this match. I don't have it written down in my notes because I'm terrible and just learning. But I can tell you that the impression that I came away with from this is that nothing matters. Is that nothing in the women's tag team division matters at all. All that really matters is that we're making fun of Nia Jax a lot in multiple different ways, and that some reason attractive-looking men are thirsty for Nia Jax, which is fine. Everybody has a type. And if that's the type for an Andrade or a Reginald, that's cool. Okay, but that shouldn't be the story around your tag team's belt, because you're rendering it meaningless. You're making it about one person and not the work that goes into winning the belt. It no longer... Belts are there because people want to seem like they're the best at tag team wrestling. That's what the belt story should be about, right? Except for the 24/7 belt, but whatever. Most belts are about being the best at that thing gives you the belt, right? That is the MacGuffin of greatness, is the belts. Without that MacGuffin of greatness, you're just telling stories. People are winning and losing and getting over on each other, but you're not striving for the big old brass ring. And the big old brass ring are the tag team belts or the like universal belt or the whatever, right? Now, the tag belts are essentially meaningless, as the story between Raw and SmackDown is really just about Nia Jax, which is ridiculous. That's all I'm going to say about that, because I don't want to talk about it anymore. The best thing that happened over the evening was, of course, Cesaro and Daniel Bryan up on the ring at the end of the night. Roman Reigns comes out and goes, I don't want to deal with you, Cesaro. Whatever. You're not worth my time. But you, Daniel Bryan, let's get this over with. Let's get it done. My belt versus your career next Friday night on SmackDown. I did not see that coming. That is a risky move. Like, we know from reporting that Daniel Bryan's contract ends in September, that he's been looking to do other things in wrestling, that he didn't feel creatively satisfied with the WrestleMania match, so it makes some sense that he would be stepping back from week to week wrestling, but to put it in such a way where it's like, I'm not going to see you anymore if I lose this, put emotional stakes in it. And here's the thing, the three dudes who are up there are all great at, like, making you feel those emotional stakes. And that's what made it even better, right? Like, Roman Reigns is up there going, I'm the king of this place. And so you leave if we don't do this. And you feel it, because you feel like, given the way that he's been booked, he is the king of SmackDown. I hate the term island of relevancy, and I'm glad they stopped using it, but he makes people around him feel relevant right now in SmackDown. And Daniel Bryan, it has a storied history within and outside of WWE with the Yes Movement that people love and have latched onto, and he is a hero for a lot of people who watch wrestling. And so you have these like titanic forces clashing, and they're giving it away. They're going to give it to us next Friday night, or this Friday night on SmackDown. I'm super excited about that. I hope you are too. That's what we're going to do for now. I'm going to be back after this break because the bosses tell me I have to do commercials, so I might as well do one now. See you in a second. You're listening to Trensday Night Radio.
The following bout is scheduled for one fall.
This is Trensday Radio, your weekly wrestling show here on the Be On Air Network. Now, here's Sean. Well, thank you, Me. I'm back, Me. What's going on? It is great to be with you here for the second half of today's Trensday Wrestling Radio show. Wednesday? It's not Wednesday. Trensday's Tuesday Wrestling radio show, brought to you from the NCU studios here at the Be On Air Network. Proud to be a part of it. And I am going to be talking about Impact's Rebellion pay-per-view and then into some AEW stuff here in the second half of our show. So stick around. So first up, we had Impact Rebellion, and it was super duper fun. I got to watch a lot of fun wrestling and not be mad at any of it, and that's always really nice because they didn't oversauce the pudding like some other promotions that I know. As I always do when I talk about my reviews, I don't do every match because I don't care about every match all that much. I think there was some really fun stuff in this pay-per-view, though, and the first one was the X Division Championship, which had some amazing bits to it, including some ingenious, three-way holds and spots that were really cool, and everybody really put their body on the line. I honestly thought that Ace Austin was a lock because I just like him. I think I just got worked into thinking Ace Austin would be like the X Division champion forever because he only really won it like one or two pay-per-views ago. I think it hasn't been that long of a run, but from what I understand, I'm just getting into watching Impact, is that the X Division belt kind of gets passed around a whole bunch. So maybe I shouldn't have been as surprised that Ace Austin dropped it, but I do love the fact that Josh Alexander won it. I think he was the right guy. If anybody had to lose it, if Ace had to lose it, I think Josh Alexander was the right guy to walk out of that match with it. And he said something to Sports Illustrated that I thought really if you've never got to watch Josh Alexander before, if you don't watch Impact Wrestling, he is one of the reasons to watch it. He's like a 17-year veteran, spent most, I think, of his career with Impact, and is just super good at the in-ring game. Love him. He was talking to Sports Illustrated recently, and he said that he thought it was the greatest three-way match of all. He was talking. No, not his. He was reflecting on another match. This was in an interview with Sports Illustrated, where he was talking about a triple threat match with Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, and AJ Styles from Unbreakable in 2005. And he said he thought that was the greatest three-way match of all time, and that when Samoa Joe came to the X Division, it gave him a burning desire to be a pro wrestler. So having that throwback, one of the spots that they did, which was a monkey flip, they did into a Rana, I think. Yeah, it was a monkey flip into a Rana, was something he wanted to put in there as a homage to that event. And so he's somebody who really kind of gets what the X Division is about, this sort of high work rate, high energy sort of place where you can go and really show off your skills. And man alive, it was a great match. I just had and here's the other thing, it was a great way to start off the night. I think a lot of people know or remember the X Division from the TNA days when TNA Impact was more popular than it is now. And so seeing that up first and seeing it so well represented by the three guys in the ring, I think really probably brought a lot of people in, because I think the expectation for people who are observers of wrestling is that Impact Rebellion is probably going to be the most watched and the most important of the Impact pay-per-views, and definitely the most hyped since Tessa Blanchard won the Impact Championship belt back in late 2019, early 2020, and then had to drop it because of the lots of reasons, but also because of the global sickening. The next thing up is Tenille Dashwood had what I thought was her best match in the title bout versus current reigning Impact Women's Champion Deonna Purrazzo. I was skeptical about Tenille. I loved her when I went back and watched old NXT, but she was never the best in-ring worker. She had a lot of personality, a lot of style. She definitely has the look that I think a lot of people like to enjoy when watching wrestling. So she's got it. She's got a lot of the package. I was just never super impressed by her. I didn't think she wasn't bad by any stretch, but she wasn't she wasn't going to put on 5-star matches. But either because Deonna Purrazzo is so good that she makes everybody look good, or because Tenille really just kind of showed out big time, knowing that this was a really big chance for her, or some combination of both, made this a very fun match for me, and a very solid match, too. One of the things that I kind of criticize Impact for is a lot of it feels a little loose, right? A lot of the stuff feels a step slow. It feels like it wasn't quite, things don't quite land the way you want them to. Not that it's inherently bad, just that it's a step down from, the higher level of execution you expect out of other mainstream wrestling promotions. That was not the case for me in this match. Just looking back on it as a whole, I can't remember it. It's been a couple days. I can't remember it hit for hit. But as a whole, this was a snappy, hard-hitting match with some great holds and some awesome reverses that was too short for me. And this is a thing with both this and then the women's tag team match. I think they were both under 10 minutes, which is weird. Like, this was a 3-hour pay-per-view with 8 matches, and the 2 women's matches were under 10 minutes. And I am a big fan of women's wrestling and would always want to give it more time. And especially the Tenille Dashwood Deonna Purrazzo title match, I think deserved more time. Just as I was getting into it, going, oh my god, this was awesome, I need to keep watching it, boop, it was done. And that was a bit of a bummer for me. So the next thing up I wanted to talk about from here was the women's tag team championship. Rachel Ellering makes her debut with Jordynne Grace, managed by Jazz, who got her manager's license, which, by the way, I want to get a manager's license. That sounds awesome. I would love to go out and manage them. I'd never be a good wrestler. I just wouldn't. I'm too afraid of pain, but I think I'd be a great manager. I think that'd be a lot of fun. This was a super fun match, though. It was one of those power versus speed sorts of matches, and you could tell Rachel is, Jordynne Grace is one of the best wrestlers in Impact Wrestling. Probably the best women's wrestler aside from Deonna Purrazzo, and they're both very good in very different ways. But Jordynne is just so good and so, knows where she needs to be, can help other people look awesome in the same way that Deonna can. I think she elevated what could have been a relatively mediocre match up to something that was really, really fun. I again was confused here, though, why Tasha and Kira dropped that's Fire and Flavor, who is the former champions at this point. Why the belt, they won it I guess they won it a few months ago now. I guess it makes some sense, especially if you're looking to establish Jordynne and Rachel as your dominant team for a while, and Rachel just came in. Having her win with Jordynne the first night she shows up does actually make a lot of sense. So I'm going to turn myself around on that. While I'm surprised, I really thought Tasha and Kira, because I didn't know who Jordynne's partner was going to be, I really thought Tasha and Kira were going to keep the belt at least through whatever Slammiversary. But that is clearly not the case. Rachel and Jordynne did a great job, picked it up, and last but not least, let's talk Kenny Omega and Rich Swann. Kenny Omega is now, spoiler alert, the Unified Impact TNA Championship after going over Rich Swann in a flawed but fun match that was significantly elevated by the voice of Mauro Ranallo, who I just gushed for. Hearing him, man, I don't think I could hear him call every wrestling match. I used to complain about Mauro when I watched him on NXT. I'm like, this is too much. It's too much. All the time is too much. It's just too much in my face all the time. But you bring that guy out for a big event like this, it gives it gravitas, it gives it momentum, it gives it scope and power, and he's so good in the moment that and this is the problem with it, he made, the other announcer who was with him, whose name I just blanked on, even though I really like him most of the time, he made him look not great, right? It really seemed like, it starts with an S, Steele, Starks, Stales, whatever. The other guy, it made him feel like he was constantly working to keep up throughout the announcer game. But Mauro outbalanced that just by being such an amazing talker. Man, so good. He's just so good. And the match was fine. There were a couple of sloppy spots here and there, but I don't think, this isn't going to be a 7-star Meltzer rating match or anything, right? But what I think it did do really well is tell the story of Impact Wrestling and told the story of Rich Swann. And you could see it in the promo packages as well. Here is kind of a scrappy young guy, 30 years old. He's been around the business for a long time, picked up the championship, is the guy that even the heels in Impact are rooting for. And he loses because, of course, the babyface has to lose. And, of course, I gave there about a 10% chance of Rich Swann winning. only because I thought some shenanigans might happen. Like, I thought there was an outside chance of shenanigans happening. But having Rich Swann lose as the babyface gives him a redemption arc, which is important, right? And it gives Kenny Omega much, much further to fall in the long term, which I think is also important to the storytelling, right? If you don't like interpromotional wrestling, you're just not going to like any of this. Just don't watch it. You're not going to make yourself happy. It's the same reason I stopped watching Raw, like, halfway through this week, is because it just wasn't making me happy. I wasn't finding my love in Raw. So if you're not finding your love in interpromotional wrestling, this isn't it for you. But if you love this whole belt collector thing and this, like, massive multi-arcing story throughout multiple promotions, then, man, this hit the spot. And this hit the spot for me, and it made me beg the next big question, which is he going to go for another belt to collect? I think probably, right? Like, I don't think he's going to go for the NWA belt, just because... I mean, maybe I'm the only person who has a weird opinion about Nick Aldis, but I look at that guy and go, he needs a personal fiefdom, and NWA is his personal fiefdom, and that is where he will be, and he's very happy with it, right? I don't think he's going to drop that belt in the next 4,000 years. I just don't think it's going to happen. I do think there's a chance for him in New Japan. I do think there's a chance for him to have a Kota Ibushi come in, which is actually what really surprised me about this whole thing. There were no shenanigans. In fact, the only shenanigans that did happen served to underscore how awesome the AEW referees actually were in that, wow, brain. Okay, so Aubrey Edwards was there, right? So here's the story. Aubrey Edwards was there as a second referee, which they negotiated on the night, even though I swear to God they talked about it on the Impact beforehand. And Kenny was going to go for a chair shot on Rich Swann because he was getting frustrated that a lot of his stuff was getting countered and that that Rich had really done his work. But Aubrey took the chair away from Kenny, really underscoring the legitimacy of the outcome, which I think was really important here, right? I think there had to be a legitimate winner and a legitimate loser, and that even though Tony Khan is a smarmy beehole, and that apparently no one in Impact likes Tony Schiavone for some reason, even though he's awesome, but even though Tony Khan's a smarmy beehole, he runs a clean shop, and that the match was going to be clean, and that it was. And look, on the one hand, WWE, this is certainly not. On the other, it seems really exciting to me that this has a lot of different ways it could go, right? Like, obviously, at some point, Adam Page is going to get involved in this whole kerfuffle when he realizes how terrible his old friend is, and right now he's just kind of dealing with his own stuff, and that's fine. Kenny, however, is scheduled to be at the next Impact pay-per-view taping, or the next Impact pay-per-view event on May 12th, and is reportedly going to be at the next Impact filming session. So he's definitely going to be double-dipping between AEW and Impact, which isn't all that difficult, really, because Impact films in 4-week chunks, and AEW right now is in 2-week chunks, so that may change if they go on the road. JR said that they were going to go on the road in July, so who knows? Who knows what the future holds? But what I'm saying is, there is room, given the way filming schedules work right now, for Kenny to pursue a third thing. Probably not in Japan, given the global sickening that is still going on, and it's actually worse right now in Japan than it is in the United States. But it does make you wonder where else this is going to go. They may just do a holding pattern for a little while on Impact and AEW, but I can't imagine, given that we've seen New Japan and AEW already, that it isn't going to go in that direction a little bit. Speaking of AEW, it was confirmed yesterday or today that beginning in the 2021-22 season, according to Blue Shirt Banter, Turner will be able to air 72 regular season games of the NHL with rights to yearly NHL Winter Classic for the first time on TNT or TBS. Additionally, they will split half of the postseason games with ESPN, which will include first and second round conference finals. They will air 3 Stanley Cup Final Series, and ABC will get the other 4 over the next 7 years. Warner Media also gains rights to live streaming and simulcast, which includes HBO Max on multiple devices, bringing hockey into the future even more so by being accessible on another streaming platform. Bleacher Report, owned by Turner, will also have rights to use NHL highlights on its digital platform, which, according to NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman, will be beneficial from the deep connection Bleacher Report has with young, digital-savvy fans. Okay, so there's been a lot of talk about this deal, which is the NHL deal. First of all, that it was originally going to be with the USA and the NBC Universal stuff, and that is why NXT moved. So I gotta wonder, I haven't read enough about it yet, but I gotta wonder what changed there. But here's what I do know. AEW is not gonna move from Wednesday, contrary to popular belief, contrary to like all of the yelling and screaming that I've seen on Twitter over the last couple days. There's almost zero chance. Okay, so check this out. There's 1,300 NHL games every year, right? Before the playoffs. 72 of them will be on either TNT or TBS, one or the other. And they're going to get some postseason games. So here's my deal. Sure, NBA is on Tuesday and Thursday nights. That leaves 4 other nights of the week in which you're going to put maybe 2 to 3 games a week, right? Over a 30-week season, something like that. So here's the deal. I'm saying here's the deal a lot. So here's the deal. Here's the deal. It's not going to move AEW. They've got 2 different platforms to put it on. And then the big deal for me out of this, and the reason why the money was very likely spent, is for HBO Max, which is the digital distribution platform, which is what it looks like. It's going to be the digital distribution platform for NHL, right? Which NHL didn't have until now. That's a really, really big deal, and a much bigger deal than putting 72 games on one of your 2 Fakakta cable channels. It's not like, I mean, they're fine cable channels, and TNT is one of the bigger cable channels. But you know what I mean? That, like, we live in a world right now of content and distribution. And a single moment in time, one night a week, right, for a hockey game is not the same thing as having access to that hockey game whenever you want it on HBO Max. Access to replays from it on Bleacher Report. That is far more important and far more marketable than turning in one night or 2 nights a week for hockey games. That is where the money is going to be in the future, is in digital distribution platforms. And this is the one thing that WWE has right. If you're going to make a lot of money, it's all about content. It's all about making more content for people to watch on more different platforms. Warner Media is in the game now with the NHL and with HBO Max. Or NHL is in the game now with Warner Media and HBO Max. Who needs to also be in this game is AEW, but I don't see a world in which this moves AEW, right? Because sure, sometimes you're going to have hockey on Wednesday nights. Hockey night on Wednesdays is like a thing. If you don't know about hockey, hockey on Wednesday nights is a big thing, but it could also be on ESPN, right? And they've only got 72 games a year, so you think you're going to air 30 Wednesday night hockey games and move AEW each of those nights? No. And cable hockey doesn't perform as well as wrestling, and so you're getting a cheaper product for a higher rate of return. As far as I'm aware. I might be lying about that. I'm going to do some more research on it. But I'm pretty sure cable wrestling does better than cable hockey. Right now, AEW is number 2 in their time slot. And MTV's The Chase, I think it was what it was called, The Challenge, one of the 2, just finished last week, and it was number 1 in the time slot. So it is done for the season. AEW has a real chance this week to be number 1 in their time slot. Do you kick a number 1 time slot show out of its position for 72 games a year? No? No, I didn't think so either. I think that's ridiculous. Yes, they may have to move a few nights, especially during playoff season, and that's fine. They had to do it last year with NBA as well. It is part of the like professional sports landscape. But there's a lot of freaking out that's happening right now about AEW moving nights that I think is way, way overblown. I think this is a digital deal with just a soupçon, with just a touch, with just a taste of television, right? This isn't a big old television deal, a little bitty digital distribution deal. It's a big old digital distribution deal with NHL going to HBO Max, and then 72 games out of 1,300 are going to show up 2 or 3 a week on TNT or TBS. So between 2 platforms, 72 games. I don't think that means you move AEW, right? That doesn't seem logical. Maybe they will. Maybe I'm wrong, and I will come back and I will eat my something. I will eat something that I'm not supposed to eat if AEW moves nights permanently because the NHL is going to have a few games over the course of 30 weeks on TNT or TBS. I will. I'm staking my flag in the ground right here. I will eat whatever you want me to eat. I don't know what that is, but we'll figure it out. Hopefully it's something not super gross. Okay, last thing I wanted to talk about in the waning few minutes here, we're gonna throw this into the rampant speculation bucket, and that is, I think, we're going to see an AEW tag title for women coming very, very soon. So recently you've seen Big Swole, Red Velvet, and Kylan King kind of as a rotating trio on Dark and Elevation. You've seen Ryo Mizunami and Layla Hirsch wrestling as a tag team on Dark and Elevation. You've seen Nyla Rose and Maddie Rankowski tag teaming until this week when Maddie just got destroyed by Nyla. But, you never know. Maybe that's her role in this whole thing is then getting destroyed by Nyla. On Dark and Elevation, you've seen the Steve Stars. You've even seen Diamante in tag team action, along with a number of other women from the indies put into groups against all of those other people. And I think the best thing to elevate the AEW Women's division right now is to get them tag team belts within the next 3 to 6 months. I don't mean today, right? They're obviously doing some practice with different tag teams right now. I'm not saying put those belts out for double or nothing. I'm saying by the time you get to full gear and you've got a bunch of people who have had a bunch of practice in tag teams, start your tag team division. What it allows you to do, it allows you to tell more stories with more women in a compressed period of time in over 2 hours, right? Like, you just think about the time Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler get on Smackdown. But think about that instead for someone like Nyla Rose and Maddie Rankowski, and how much better that would be. Or Ryo Mizunami and Layla Hirsch, how much better that would be, right? Like, it's the same thing. You get your women's title storylines out there, and then you can do a whole second set of, like, interpersonal storyline stuff with the women's tag teams titles, right? Because it doesn't seem like there's going to be a whole lot of putting women in factions, even though I think they should. It just doesn't seem like it's going to happen too much. I mean, you've got Chris Statlander with the Best Friends now, which is fun, and she's a perfect fit, which I never saw coming, but now that she's there, I get it, I guess. They're all the weirdos and the outcasts, that makes sense. But here's the deal. You have the building blocks here to tell some amazing stories with really talented people, getting them in-ring reps together in a more compressed period of time, because that's the other thing that tag team wrestling does for you. It allows people to get more time in the ring, or at least to get more time together in the ring, than it would if you were just booking singles matches all the time, right? I'm surprised we haven't seen more tag team matches more often over the course of the fall and winter. It was a little surprising to me, although given what we kind of now know about Eve, at least I guess less so, that they didn't go a little bit more all in on tag team wrestling earlier than this. But it seems like they're dipping their toe in the water, and that makes me very excited. What also makes me excited is that's the end of my hour, y'all. I hope you all had fun talking with me today. This is going to be up on YouTube, where don't forget to follow me on YouTube at Trensday Night. You can just search for it in a little search bar. Once I get 1,000 subscribers, I'll be able to actually make it my name, youtube.com/Trensday Night. And don't forget to give me a follow on Twitter, also at Trensday Night. It has been glorious talking with you all. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on the Be On Air Network. I think that's going to do it. Everybody travel safe, and I will see you next Wednesday here on the Be On Air Network.